This is the 11th game of the match, just one game away from halfway. So it is interesting that Tal considers it the decisive game of the match. Usually you think that the decisive, if the match is scheduled for 24 games, that the decisive game would be around game 20, 22, 23, who knows, maybe the last one. But no, Tal believes that this was the decisive turning point of the match, let's say. Because the first part of the match went well for him. He played his kind of half-bluffing chess, and in the beginning Botvinnik could not adapt himself and lost some games. But then Botvinnik was coming back into shape, and also managed to win 2 games. So now, before the 11th game, she was trailing by just 1 point, which in such a long match is not such a big disadvantage. Now, once again, Tal faced the task of finding something against the Caro-Kann, which he could not refute. And the best way to deal with this problem, he thought, was to completely avoid it. He started the game with knight f3. And knight f3 is basically a positional move, a slow way of starting developing. And actually this is the kind of game Tal will manage to play. A good positional strategic game, maintaining the pressure all the time. At some point, Botvinnik was close to equality, or maybe it was even equal. But it was for a short time, and then he got again into a somewhat passive position. He missed his chance. And then again, Tal managed to keep control and win a good game. And actually, this must have been the decisive blow. I mean, Botvinnik knew that he was in permanent tactical danger. But if he could calculate well and control the complications, then he would have the confidence that he would be a better strategic player than Tal. But after losing this game, this trump would be of no use. I mean, if he could lose a strategic game against Tal, then where would his chances to be looked for in the match? So let's see the course of events. Botvinnik, he knew obviously that Tal had not much experience as a d4 player, so he adopted a typical Grünfeld setup. Okay, Tal used a red move order, but then he transposed back to the Grünfeld. Now bishop f5 is the normal move, and after the knight development to either c3 or d2, the bishop would eventually get to e4. For some reasons, Botvinnik played bishop e6. He thought that the pressure against c4 would cause some lack of harmony in White's position. But Tal found a very simple way to keep developing. Now he's 2 tempi ahead in development. He already connected rooks, for instance. And, well, the point is that after d takes e4, knight g5, Black can keep his extra pawn, but then his kingside position would be simply ugly, and actually the position is dangerous for Black. So now we have a developing phase for both sides. The moves do not require a special comments. Okay, and now we reach this position. We can say that the opening is over. Both sides have managed to place the pieces in harmonious way. Okay, White has some more space, but at the same time, for a Grünfeld player like Botvinnik was, the lack of space was not such a problem, because he knew that he could always prepare some counterplay with d takes e4 followed by c5 or c5 or sometimes e5. And White's advantage of space could easily turn into some target, let's say, at the central pawns, no? And it's also possible that Botvinnik thought, well, Okay, white is slightly better, but now he reached the maximum of activity. We both sides have reached the maximum of activity. And now every move each side makes presents the risk that it does not improve the position. This is actually the principle of Zugzwang. If your pieces are optimally placed, then any move would just make your position worse, which is some sort of paradoxical. But in a middle game position, it is very difficult to speak about Zugzwang. This aspect has more of a psychological aspect. I mean, Botvinnik was by far more experienced than Tal, and he could have hoped that, well, Tal would not find the best move that would improve the position. And actually, Tal confesses that he considered the move c5 briefly, starting some sort of queenside attack, but then he rightly understood that after this sequence, Black would be ready to play e5, and suddenly Black has a comfortable position. His counterplay in the center is quite strong. And also, one may wonder what are actually doing all these pieces, decentralized pieces. I mean, why are they placed on central squares if there is nothing going on the C and the D file, actually? And then Tal found what I consider one of his best moves in the match, Queen A5. Okay, the move is actually natural when you see it. It puts some pressure on the black position, but actually it's an important moment because it shows that strategy and tactics, small tactics, let's say, like in Capablanca's games, go very well hand in hand together. And what do I have in mind? For instance, there is the move Queen C7. If White exchanges queens, then his advantage would almost vanish. I mean, at some point, Black would bring his king closer to the center, maybe play f6, bishop f7, and bring his king to e8, or I don't know. But the king becomes a good defensive piece, and any piece exchange, in fact, favors Black, who has not so much space. But there is some tactical element here. Knight takes e6. The knight not only defends the queen and takes a pawn, but it's also kind of taboo. It's not a piece sacrifice, because if bc, then queen takes a6, and if queen takes c6, then it's even worse. It's c takes d5, double attack, fork. Okay, this is already losing for Black. Okay, if queen b4, then we have a similar variation, because now rook takes c6 is not possible on account of queen takes d8. That's the queen is too far on b6. So Botvinnik did not find anything better than giving up the center, which of course is some sort of concession, but okay, it's also a typical Grünfeld move. Knight takes c4, queen c7. Once again, he's not interested in exchanging queens, and he plays queen e1, another strong move, avoiding the pins along the long diagonal and the d file, and keeping the advantage, the space advantage intact. Now the plan is simply e4 followed by d5. And Botvinnik, for a time being, he played the regrouping move queen b8, and now after e4, the white's position seems to become threatening, but Botvinnik had not exhausted his resources, and now since the d4 pawn has become somewhat weak, he took on c4. One of the main things is that bc is not good because of c5, and now we can see that the queen is not. I mean, as a temporary location, e1 was the best, but for other purposes, it leaves the b2 bishop undefended, and then white gets a weak pawn on c4. So Tal rightly took on c4 and knight c7, and now. Okay, White still has his space advantage. In fact, it's even clearer than earlier. He also has the bishop's pair. But at the same time, the bishop's pair is a double-edged issue, because the G2 bishop does not contribute in direct way to the defense of the D4 pawn. And also the B2 bishop is under some sort of pin. I mean, it causes the pin of the D4 pawn, which means that actually both bishops need to be activated. And the optimal setup would be like this, with the bishops on h3 and f4, targeting the very important diagonals and squares in the center and on the queen side with domination. Tal considers that bishop c1 would have been the strongest move. Bishop h3, and actually it's also logical because it would, I mean, this maneuver costs 2 tempi, so it's better to start with it, because otherwise you'll never get to do it. He started with bishop h3, which took the bishop away from the long diagonal a little bit too early. And after this regrouping sequence, okay, bishop g5 is better than bishop f4 because it forces the rook to abandon the optimal d8 square. Queen d2, and now with the bishop on h3, he got f5. f5, which is a typical Grünfeld move. You can see that Botvinnik is not playing badly this game. He has clear plans. He wants to get the d5 square for his knight. Actually, it will be not so easy to occupy it because the e6 pawn would require a permanent defense. Well, now f3 would weaken the e3 square. Is not a move you can be proud of. So okay, Tal preferred to switch now. He proved certain flexibility of mind. Now he does not play only strategical. He transforms the advantage of the bishop's pair into some vulnerability of the king. And again, it will be not so much an attack, a brilliant Tal attack that we'll see. It will be just a strategic attack on the king side, where, incidentally, the king's presence plays a part. I mean, black, on one hand, he has an extra defending piece, the king, but at the same time, a possible target for white pieces. Tal rightly considers that by this moment the position was about equal. Botvinnik had defended very well. Well, Tal continues to increase his control on dark squares with his moves, but actually this is the critical moment in which Botvinnik somehow hesitated, and he failed to find this equalizing move. He probably shied away because of this, but then he has rook e7, and now okay, Tal gives this long variation, which of course looks very slightly more pleasant for white, but it should be drawn. Why more pleasant? Because in some cases, if all the rooks are exchanged and the white king gets to e4 or e5, then the king's hand majority can be more dangerous than the queen's hand majority. But this is a long scenario. It's not so easy to exchange all coins, all rooks. So actually, this was probably one of the very few moments when Botvinnik could have equalized. But instead, he went like this. Also, he could have played f4 at some point. He didn't try to do it for some reasons. Queen d7, and now okay, finally Tal admits that the bishop had nothing to do on h3, that he had played it prematurely there, and changes the diagonal. And actually, this is the moment when he still considers the position equal, but I think he missed something. Because in this position, he thinks that rook d5 would have equalized. Because if bishop c4, then rook takes d4, there are general exchanges. White gets the pawn back on e6, and it's a draw. But he probably misses the strong move rook e3. Sorry, not this rook, rook 1 e3. The point is that black cannot take on d4. If this, then white wins a rook. And it means that after rook 1 e3, white simply maintains his domination. He can play bishop c4, h4, very much as in the game. It would be not an equal position. Botvinnik rightly decides to keep his rook on the king side. But now both opponents were approaching time trouble. I mean, I think they had both less than 10 minutes left for the remaining 8 moves, which by those days standard was meant as a time trouble. The problem is that now white's position is very easy to play. King g7 looks like a consolidating move, but okay, now after h5, black has the problem, should he allow h6 or h takes g6 or live with this permanent threat all the time? It's not easy to understand what to do, and so he decided to clear the things on the king side, rook h4, and now Tal recommends h6. This way the king would be a useful defending piece, but I'm not so sure, because after rook e4, over defending d4, followed by rook takes h5, rook g4, bishop d3, somehow the weakness of the light squares is very, very annoying, and the knight has to stand on c7 to over defend d6. That's a problem. It cannot participate in very effective way to the defense. So, okay, Botvinnik makes this move, which seems to lose to Tempest, but at the same time, what could black do? I mean, imagine he had played queen d6, e7, queen e7, d6. It would have been the same. I mean, there was not much constructive to be done with black. This is also partly because, you know, when it happens that between two strong players, the feeling is that, well, starting with one moment, that player played such hard to understand moves. And it's not like this. It's that the previous phase was better played strategically by the other player. And then when the time came for a direct confrontation, the other player was, from positional point of view, not prepared to meet the threat. So any move he would make, like Tarras said, in bad positions, all the moves are bad. So it's not that Botvinnik played badly this part of the game. It was simply that Tal had outplayed him before, strategically. And now he's just doing the harvest of it. Rook g7, rook e5, very natural attacking moves. White makes no effort to attack. Now he prepares a new regrouping with rook h6, knight f6, rook h6. And now, according to Tal, queen d6 is the decisive mistake. It was the 40th move. He recommends knight d7 with some chances to save the game. It's interesting that when I heard that this is the decisive mistake, I thought, well, maybe there is some trick, some combination. But no, it was some positional element. After this, black cannot avoid the exchange of one rook. And after that, his defense would be much more difficult. So almost impossible to carry out. So it means that Tal by this stage was thinking only in positional terms, strategic terms, which is quite interesting. And okay, the game went like this. This exchange was carried out. Now we see that with his pieces massed on this wing, black has problems defending the queen side. Knight c7, but then queen c7. Again, if he plays this, then queen a7 is very, very annoying. Instead he preferred queen f3 with some sort of counterplay, but it doesn't really work. This king h8. If rook g7, then this is finally some tactics, but not really. I mean, the attack was purely positional. It was nothing really. So after this forced maneuver, Tal simply won material in the queen ending, and he managed to win it and to make the gap, transform it, make it back by 2 points. And as I said, more importantly, to undermine Botvinnik's confidence that he could be better strategically than Tal. So this was really the decisive game, a convincing game. He convinced everybody, himself, Tal, and the public, that he could beat Botvinnik by normal means.